Hello, doll friends. This is Michael Canadas with the Carmel Doll Shop and the Grovian Doll Museum. We are in full celebration mode for World Doll Day at the Grovian Doll Museum, and we have one of our good buddies and experts on all things porcelain, Kathy Turner. And today, Kathy is going to enlighten us on one of the most prolific makers of the late 19th century, early 20th century, Hertwig. So here we are.
Thank you so much. And don't call me an expert, because the more I know, the less I know.
You're an expert.
No, I know a few things, though. Yes, and thank you again for inviting me here.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
It is an honor to be here in the Grovian Museum and Carmel Doll Shop. It's just a pleasure to be here and to be sharing what I know with the World Doll Day.
65 countries.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be talking about a company that's in, or was in, Germany. So Hertwig, yes. Hertwig started out in 1864. And in 1864, Christoph Hertwig and two partners, Beyerman and Berkner, they bought an old iron smelting factory that was closed, and they refitted it for porcelain production. It took them about a year before they were able to make anything, but by 1865, apparently they were making some items of porcelain. It is dubious as to how much doll production they were making then. I haven't found any hard proof of that. It seems that their doll production really got going later. They were things that delayed them getting really profitable in the business initially. First of all, Christoph Hertwig handed over his share of the management of the business to his 18-year-old son, Ernst, who ended up bickering with Berkner. Berkner had legal problems, so they bought him out. And then Beyerman suffered a very tragic personal fire and other tragedy, and he died. So it ended up with just in the Hertwig family with Ernst, the 18-year-old, running this factory. And he's writing to his father saying, so-and-so's coming in drunk every day. All the modelers took up and left today. He was having a lot of problems. But finally, Christoph came back, kind of whipped things into shape, and they started getting rolling. And then the Franco-Prussian War erupted. And that was about 1870-71, and that depressed the market again. So once again, they really weren't making much in the marketplace until at least, I would say, late 1870s, probably into the 1880s. And that's when we really get rolling. And once Hertwig got rolling, they were rolling. By the peak production of that company, they were making about 5 million dolls a year. And much of their product was exported. A lot of it went to the United States. And they were really going for, I would say, the everyman market. They weren't going for the top tier. They were going for the hoi polloi, a doll for everyone. And so now we're going to start looking at some of the dolls that they made. We're going to turn and start over here on this end. One of the first things that they got I guess they call it a patent, a license for, was making the dolls with the ABC educational bodies, these printed bodies. This was made of a cheap Nanking, they called it Nanking cotton, which came from China. And this doll in particular is special, though it looks like what we would call a common lowbrow. It is also a whistle head. Now, you don't find these with the whistle in it very often, and I suspect that's because the whistle doesn't work very well.
Or do you think, Kathy, that it just doesn't work well now, that maybe it did work when it was new?
I don't know, but I've huffed and puffed, and I've never been able to get
but
a
it's still
out of it.
It's a novelty, isn't it?
It is a novelty that they made. And of course, this is in China with the typical China limbs that they put on these bodies. This is an all original body. I can't say that the head is original because it's sewn on, and they usually just glued them on, even when there were sew holes. And another one with another educational body. This is also a novelty, and this doll is all original though. This one is a novelty because she has an open cut mouth with teeth showing. Again, this is not often found, and again, I suspect that she may not be the most popular because I think the teeth look a little creepy, personally.
Well, but it's certainly, if you're going to put her in the class, can you turn her around a little bit?
I'm going to turn you to the back, actually, because I want to see something.
Oh, wow.
She has the original sticker. The McKinley-Taft Act of 1890-91 required that things be marked if they were going to be for export. Initially, they were having them stamped permanently on the back, but this one has a sticker.
So this kind of helps date her as
yes, she would be actually a little later because she has the sticker versus the stamp mark.
But those teeth are hysterical.
The teeth are wonderful, though.
And for competition, that would certainly put her in a
better class.
Better class.
Yeah.
She would take a ribbon, I'm sure.
This all original body has a couple other things I wanted to point out. This was originally stitched together when they sold them. Originally, the legs were stitched together to keep them from whacking against each other. And the other thing that they did is they had a wire inserted in the body so it could form a permanent seated position, but over time these wires end up poking through the body and they'll end up tearing through the fabric. So I tend to nip them off.
Yeah, if you can.
If I can. So towards the end of the 1800s, we ended up having American companies like Bordfelks send over Fred Kolb to place orders. They started ordering fancier heads. The company Hertwig also started bringing on artists from the industrial art schools of Germany, and they started creating these very fanciful bonnet head dolls. And I was grateful to Michael for instructing me that the name of this hat is called a peach basket.
Yep. That's what it is.
And this is a really heavy head for this body.
Well, so they were using student artists.
Well, no, they weren't necessarily student artists. They were artists that were trained in the industrial arts school for the porcelain industry.
They need a lot of masterpieces.
They needed people to create these molds for them, these models for them. All the porcelain factories of Germany used people that graduated from these schools.
Well, you do know that in the world of doll making, the most important person is the mold maker.
That is a very important aspect. I wanted to point out one other thing. So this is a bisque head. She has bisque arms. She has china legs. Hertwig mixed and matched a lot. So you will often find a bisque head with china limbs or a china head with bisque limbs. They didn't seem to care. This one has another shape of arm that was used for their bisque heads. This one does have, I think, both bisque head and hands and feet. This is another body type that has a little stripe down the front. I think that may have been just sort of a cheap way of simulating a corset. This one, the wire has been removed, but not before it did some damage to the upper legs.
This is a common.
Yes.
Just to wear.
And I wanted to also point out that this shoulder plate design is one that you will see with several different hats, molded hats. But the shoulder plate with that little front placket with the gold embellishment, the little Peter Pan collar, that is a common shoulder plate style of the company.
And this is a lovely hat design too.
Do you have a name for that hat design?
Yes, but and I just casquette.
Casquette. See, I'm learning something
Took me a
here
minute.
too.
Sorry.
This little model here, I think, was probably one of the earlier model designs that they used. That doesn't mean that the doll is necessarily that early, because once they had a model going, they used it for 40, 50 years.
But that's beautiful, a lovely color combination.
And if you look at the colors they used, they really liked a pastel palette.
Well, I think that's very appealing to the women consumers.
And it was fashionable for the time, for that era. And they also were patriotic.
Oh, that's fun.
This little Phrygian, I think that's what they call it, Phrygian cap.
Yes.
And she has her patriotic collar on it. This doll, it was available in a wide range of sizes. I have a bigger one, which I didn't bring. And this one, being small, has these very simple arms and legs, which are original.
Fun.
This is one I did not remove the clothes from because they're sewn on.
Now, of this group here, Kathy, where would you put them in rarity, in what order?
That's, it's the ones that have the whistle head and the open cut mouth, they are uncommon.
Okay.
I would not personally call them rare, but I would call them uncommon.
Okay.
I think you see this one here with this pink hat, and also was in blue, I think. You see this one with some frequency. This one with this flower hat you see with some frequency. You don't see this one as often.
But I mean, if you think about it logically, she's just asking to for a child to play with it. That's a lot of porcelain.
Yes, well, it's heavy-headed, so it's likely to fall over and
exactly.
break. And this one, you don't see that often either.
I don't think I've ever seen that one. But you've got the eagle eye for these things, so I'm sure you see more than I do. Although now I'll be seeing them every week.
Let's come over to this group over here. I'll get to that one later. So the other thing that happened is right around 1900 or so, Hertwig was approached by a local confectioner, a candy maker, and he had been churning out little candy snow children, snow babies. And he decided that he wanted to ask Hertwig to make porcelain snow babies. So Hertwig was actually the first company to make snow babies. And I don't actually have a snow baby, but I do have this doll that has a snow hat and has this texture applied. And in reading, it turns out that Hertwig referred to, direct translation, the snow effect that they put on snow babies as glitter sand.
Glitter sand, how neat.
Which they probably did, we were discussing this, by grinding up their discards and then probably using slip and applying it in the greenware stage. It was another, to apply that texture and get that going.
And it turned their waste into a
profit,
product.
Into profit, which they were all about profit. This company was probably the best in mass production of any of the porcelain factories at this time. They churned these out in vast
you said
quantity.
5
million a year.
Wow.
This model here with the butterfly, this was made exclusively for the American market.
Oh, but it's wonderful.
It's wonderful. This is a large example. The butterfly came in different colors. You can find it in yellow. I think there's a green. It's maybe a pink, and they're all pastel colors.
And I noticed that we have the same corseted body as we looked at earlier.
Yes.
The faux corset.
Again, I'm always uncertain whether this head originally came on this body when I see this sewing, because Hertwig always just glued the heads on. So somebody sewed.
But it is the same body, though.
It is. So it
could have come loose.
It could have come loose and then been sewed on. You never know. And let's see. She has china limbs, even though it's a bisque head, and then she has bisque legs. So mix and match. Just grab one from this barrel and one from another.
So collectors out there, don't panic when
Don't panic. Yeah, it's all good. See, this one is a bisque head, and it has china limbs. These are these little
I will tell you though, as a dresser, it's easier to dress them when they have china arms.
Because
they slide right.
And this is another style of leg that you will find on some of the Hertwig dolls.
Lovely.
So there's a couple, like 3 different types of legs and maybe 2 different kinds of arms. This here is another Hertwig model, which has this wide blue hat. And probably you have a name for that too. What's interesting is when they had these fancy hats, They did.
That's just called a hat.
It's just called a hat. Okay, good. They didn't bother to paint the back often.
Yeah.
Again, to save some time. And this one you'll see is marked Germany. It's a little faint, but I think you can see
Well,
it.
they could have just been trying to pretend that the hat is lined with a pretty satin.
They could have been.
Yeah.
This one has a size number and the word Germany on it. And China limbs. It looks like China arms.
Could
and
this
legs.
one, this could possibly be a he, because it looks
Yeah,
a
it
little
could.
bit like a sailor collar.
A sailor collar. Well, didn't girls have sailor
Yes,
collars?
they did,
sometimes, too?
but
This-
it could be either one.
Well, I think a lot of these dolls could be either or.
Yeah.
And I think that they're almost always children.
Yes.
So they shouldn't be dressed in, a
Ladies'
full-blown
dress. Mhm.
ladies' dress. This particular
And
one,
you've taught, you and Ann Coleman have taught me, the thing that people should know is what differentiates them is the neck.
the short, fat little neck is a child.
Yeah.
This particular one with this peculiar little hat is supposed to represent an Italian girl, I was told by Ann Coleman.
I think she's right. And hopefully we can get this. I want them to see the ruffles.
Yes, the shoulder
It's
plate
very, very interesting.
is quite intense on this one. And this was a small one, but they made this model in larger sizes. And as for sizes, dolls went from anywhere from about 4 inches up to 30 inches
Wow.
in size. The tiny ones, often the all bisque ones, would sell for as little as, I think it was like $1 a gross.
And a gross is
100
pieces.
But then the more elaborate, larger ones, you go up to 30 inches and it's a more elaborate doll. Those might sell for, let's see, they sold those by the dozen, and that might have been, oh dear, I forgot how much I said those were. $5 a dozen, which
Wow.
was actually, that was getting up to being a more expensive
Yes,
doll.
sure, for the time.
Yeah. And they made more in bisque than China, but these are
It's wonderful.
some China examples. This little clown with a mustache.
And it's interesting, Kathy, to me, when it has glaze, it has an earlier look to it, doesn't it?
It does,
Even
but
though it's not.
even though it doesn't necessarily mean it is.
Yeah, it just gives it a more, I guess we could say, old-fashioned look.
And then this one again with almost a pale mauve. And again, look, they didn't bother to paint the
No.
back. Even the curls of the hair aren't painted because it was really quick,
Yeah.
the paint jobs they gave them.
But yet it still has a lot of charm.
It does, it does. And again, it has this model of lower legs. This one has China limbs. This one's had a little repair to the upper body on it.
But it's actually a very nice little body.
It is. And that is a typical.
And whoever repaired it did a very good, beautiful
It could use
job.
a little more stuffing in the top, personally, I think.
Well,
So the other thing, two other things actually I wanted to talk about. There's some idea that these factory workers were these real, impoverished, beaten down individuals. And to some extent, everybody working in the factory had a hard life. However, Hertwig was one of the companies, probably because they had a hard time retaining workers in their early years, they came up with offering their factory workers health insurance. They had an emergency fund for their workers. In the town of Katsut, they built a swimming pool that was both for tourists and for the residents. So they were probably at the forefront of taking care of their workers.
so buy Hertwig.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention, well, there's a couple other things, because I haven't even talked about the guys up top here. One of the most popular models that they made were the Pet Names series, again, for the American market. And this is a Helen,
Hi,
I
Helen.
believe. Let's say hi, Helen. This is a large size Helen. The Pet Name dolls were made for Butler Brothers, which was a distributor in New York City. And the first series of names were Edith, Esther, Florence, Mabel, Pauline, and Ruth. And those first came out in 1895. And then about 9 years later, they had a second round ordered by Butler Brothers, and they added Agnes, Bertha, Dorothy, Ethel, Helen, and Marion.
Wow.
And
they're fun to collect, the names.
They're very, you know, you could, in this one, I think, I don't know if you can see what it has. I think it says patent
pending.
Patent pending, or applied for.
Let's see.
Patent applied for.
Let's see if we can get this for the viewers.
And it says Germany.
Yeah, you can barely see it. But
so this is probably one of the earlier ones. When the first Helens were out.
And how long do you think the name they made these for a long time?
Yes, I mean Hertwig was in production past World War II.
Wow.
So they could have been churning these out up until then. I just going to divert one more time because I almost forgot about this exquisite lady.
And that's a wonderful piece.
This one, this style of hat, thank you again, Michael. He was informing me that this, you gave me the name of this type of hat?
No, it's just a bonnet.
Just a bonnet, okay.
But
fair.
it's
1895 maybe, or 90s?
Late 1890s.
Late 1890s, which fits with when I believe that they were really getting rolling, getting artists to, you know, design their dolls for them.
Yeah, and beautiful curls, which are very fashionable.
Yes, and
but you can see it that the bonnet just holds a little tiny bun on top.
It does, and it would be a size number. They did not put their company mark, which was a cat under a little hut roof. They didn't put it on any of their porcelain. All you'll get is production marks inside. The other thing, if you notice, all these dolls have these rather shallow, short shoulder plates. That's another trait.
Well, it's a cost saving.
It is a cost saving measure. Even though some of them have rather hefty hats on their heads, it might make them a little top heavy.
I mean, for our viewers out there that are fascinated with hats, I mean, they're wonderful. These dolls are just great to just collect the history of hats.
You could collect pet names, you could get all the names, or you could collect one name and get it in a whole row of sizes, or you could go and you could collect dolls with variety of different hats, and they're affordable.
And I know that some people aren't going to understand this, but I don't mind these just being heads on shelves. You know, that you're not, it doesn't have to be a whole doll.
Right.
You know, and they're available that way too.
This one this one was on an incorrect body. It was on an ABG body, so I took it off to bring it because we weren't talking about that company.
Yeah, good, thank you.
So there we go.
All right, where do we go next?
Well, I'm going to talk about this briefly right here in the center. This, thank you again to Michael and the Grovian Museum. This is in their collection, and this is one of the sample boards from the Hertwig Company. When the company was privatized after World War II, and they were in East Germany, the East German government nationalized the firm, and they basically cleared out a bunch of stuff.
Took it home?
They took it home. No, they sold it off for money because they needed cash. The government needed cash. But some of them also later came up and were auctioned off by a big auction house. And I think this one might have been in that auction. I actually have one different selection as well. But these would probably, I would think these, given the look of them, would you say 1920s?
I would definitely say
that. I think these would be 1920s.
Maybe teens.
It could be teens.
But 20s, yeah.
But look how charming these little guys down here with their molded hats. These soldiers could probably actually date when those were, because we had the World War I and then we had World War II. Yep. So I would say those were closer to World War I.
So teens.
Yep. And this gal, I do not know why her body is drawn up around her neck like that. That is very peculiar.
It is peculiar, but you know, if you kind of really study it, you can see there is a shoulder plate underneath.
I know,
there.
So I'm puzzled by that. I don't know why.
I don't know why. We have never opened it. It came to us via Angel's Attic Museum in Santa Monica. So I've never taken it apart.
I think that this beige cardboard may be the original sample board. The one I have, if you see them on that background, it might be.
Okay.
This one looks like it might be an intact an intact sample board. I'm not quite sure what's up with that one.
Well, she's just
She looks a little
She's
out of
just
place
there.
in this family.
Well, but you know what? They were in the 20s. They were selling those as old-fashioned.
Yes, they were. Grandma's doll.
Grandma's doll.
So that's a good example. If you, I was able to get the sample board I got on the secondary market, not from the original auction, and they didn't identify it, so I've actually got a good buy on it.
Good.
The other thing I want to talk about is lowbrow chinas.
Okay.
So lowbrow chinas, well, these are all lowbrow chinas. Let's bring them all over. Now, whenever people see lowbrow chinas, they say, oh, that's a Hertwig. But a lot of porcelain companies were making your basic lowbrow chinas. This little head, insignificant little head, if you turn it around, I don't know if the camera can pick that up, it is marked OK.
Yeah, we can't see it, but
well,
OK.
OK, it's there. And that stands for Orban and Kanabi. This is not a Hertwig.
Okay.
And then I pick up this model. I think that this is the same model as that. And I don't know if that means that it's also an Orban Kanabi or not, because it does not have the OK. But I know this one's a bit blurry, but if you look closely, it has the same swirls.
Is it a possibility that Hertwig could have supplied them for OK? Or does that not
No,
plausible?
they were making their own.
Okay.
They were making their own.
So we're talking market trends.
Well, we're talking about a lowbrow china, and we don't know who made this one.
Right, okay.
Why would Hertwig be making a bunch of these models and those other lowbrows? Why would they need to make two other versions of lowbrow? Why would they bother? That's time and money. And then we have another version of a lowbrow, and it has this gigantic impressed
We can see that.
six, you think?
Yeah, we can see that.
Very heavy porcelain.
Yeah.
It has the short neck, the short shoulder plate. I think that's just a glaze gap there. But I don't know who made this one. I don't know if Hertwig made this. I don't know if another company churned this out. It's very slapdash. You see, they didn't even bother painting the entire car. Somebody just took a brush and went whoosh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you can't assume when you see a lowbrow china necessarily, especially if it's one of these, that it was made by Hertwig.
Sure. But the safest way to go is attributed to.
Attributed to.
But then there are so many things that are easily identifiable as Hertwig.
Yes, yes. So the company kind of, frittered out after World War II, as a lot of companies did. The factory was closed up. Things were sold off in the 1990s, I believe, was the last auction that sold off the contents from the factory. And some of those, there were ledgers, I believe, also that were available then. And I'm still tracking down, because there was one collector who was in Europe that I found out about that talked about some ledgers that they pulled out of there, and I'm still trying to track those down and find out, because apparently they went back to the 1860s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So when you get those, Kathy, you got to come back and share that information with all of us on World Doll Day.
Good luck.
Yeah, you're going to get it.
If we ever get to travel again.
Yeah, we will. We
I know
will.
we
We'll
will.
be doing it again.
Well, this is just a little overview of a type of doll that is readily available. It is affordable. You can make a beautiful collection.
The price of a good dinner.
A price of a good dinner. I mean, you can get these type of, the lowbrows for very little money, and even the fancier bonnet heads, $200 maybe.
Yeah. And they're a fun little guilty pleasure.
Fun. I mean, imagine it's the whole row of these, the elaborate bonnet heads. Lovely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kathy. We appreciate it, and come back when you've got more info, because we want to be the first to have it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button.